Hi, and welcome to 50s Unscripted. I'm Shelley, and I am so excited that you're here to join me as I share my lived experiences as I embrace my second act. Life is not a movie. It is not a TV show. Best laid plans do not go accordingly. There are changes that we face every day at all the stages of our life, and 50s Unscripted is just that. I'm in my 50s. I'm 52 years young for a few months more, and I wanted to share what I've experienced so far. The changes I've had have occurred when I'm in my 20s, 30s, 40s, and will have more in my 50s. And that's why this hopefully resonates with almost anyone. And there will be different articles and discussions and guests that I'll have that'll help make it resonate for you and bring some opportunity to see that we're not alone in our struggles. And we all deal with different struggles, but they're all over the place and everybody has them. Even the people who look polished and put together on Facebook and social media, they deal with their own challenges as well. It's not easy all the time, and we personify what we want online, and that's why these discussions are so relevant. We never know when an experience that we share, when we share these lived experiences and show that life is not perfect, that it is not set in scripts and we're not those flashy movies that end with everybody getting what they want. That's okay. And it resonates and lets us know we're not alone in our struggles. Last season, I spent a lot of the time talking about my lived experiences. And I didn't quite delve into great detail on how I handled them, but I talked a little bit about the struggles I face and what I had to overcome. And I talked a lot about my inner critic. And that was probably one of the hardest changes in habits that I had to make, was reshaping that inner critic. And it's not easy. I had to learn to become my own cheerleader, supporter, and encourager. I had to stop relying on others to make me feel better and realize that I was actually doing the most damage. I was my harshest and meanest critic. I would take something that somebody said and internalize it. I would have a conversation and feel embarrassed or upset that I didn't say something, and then replay that conversation for weeks, thinking of new ways that I should have handled it. Meanwhile, that person, most of the time, probably has already moved on and not even remembered what I said. One of the things that I did discover, because I got to participate in a number of different programs, so I did things through therapy because I'm a firm believer that therapy helps. I did coaching, I got support. I also went to some areas to help support my kids. And one of the things I got to take part in was emotions, feelings therapy, so EFT. And there was a support group that we got to go to that helped us learn how to better communicate. And one of the things that we did is we identified what type of person we are. When we look at what we want to do, how we want to handle things, how we want to set our goals, our habits, and strive, we base all those on our values. We base those on the unique things to us. And that is really important. So it's important to understand the type of person we're with. Now, as I've said before, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist, but I do have like the quiz that they gave us. And so if you have a moment, grab a piece of paper, give you a couple seconds, piece of paper and a pen. And what you're going to do is you're just going to make a little column so that you have two rows, left and right. And whichever one, I'm going to say two statements. I'm going to say in the left column, this is the statement. If that resonates with you, the most. So you may have a little bit of both, but whichever one resonates the most, you're going to put a check beside it. So, and then I'll read the right and you do the same thing. So we'll give you a second to go get that. You can pause and you can go grab it. And now here we go. So in the left column, you say sorry. In the right, you don't say sorry. So which one resonates with you more, left or right? Starting with the left, you do not set high expectations for yourself or others. And then the opposite in the right, you set high expectations for yourself and others. On the left, you leave decisions to others. On the right, you take responsibility for decisions. On the left, you seek closeness. On the right, you seek distance. On the left, you need closeness and security. On the right, you need acknowledgement and respect. On the left, you are not critical. On the right, you can be critical. On the left, you can be dependent. On the right, you are independent. On the left, you come to the rescue of others. On the right, you trust others to help themselves. On the left, you easily offer comfort. On the right, you rarely offer comfort. On the left, you don't like to be alone. On the right, you like to be alone. On the left, you are often unsure of what to do. On the right, you often know what to do. Halfway through. On the left, you are scared of losing loved ones. On the right, you are not scared of losing loved ones. On the left, you cry. On the right, you don't typically cry. On the left, you are anxious when you are alone. On the right, you feel safe alone. On the left, you struggle to set limits. On the right, you have an easier time setting limits. On the left, you feel lonely after a fight. On the right, you don't feel good enough after a fight. On the left, you feel weaker when you are angry. On the right, you feel stronger when you are angry. On the left, you often do things for others. On the right, you let others do things for themselves. On the left, you are happiest at home. On the right, you are happiest when discovering new places. On the left, you need and seek protection from others. On the right, you feel you can protect yourself. On the left, you are more triggered by your loved one being independent, rebellious. On the right, you are more bothered by your loved one being dependent, clingy, needy. On the left, you are more bothered by your loved one being uncommunicative. On the right, you are more bothered by your loved one being rude. On the left, you react more to being shut out or not included in things. On the right, you react more to being blamed. I'm going to pause there. And then what I want you to do is count how many check marks you have on the left versus how many you have on the right. And there's much more to this, and I'm not going to get into all of it because this is something that therapists and support groups walk through, but it helps to understand a bit about who we are. So if you had the most check marks on the left, you are someone who it is important who I'm with. So who I'm with is important. If you're on the right, it's who I am. This means that you have different triggers, you have different drives, you have different things from that person on the other side. And this impacts our relationships and it impacts how we resonate with others. As I said, for myself, and there's many different variations and many different things. But when you look at some of the things in there, I am the left. I'm who I'm with. And I am a huge people pleaser. And that's been one of the biggest struggles that I've had to deal with because I'm always concerned about what everybody else is thinking. I want to help everybody. I want everybody to get along. I want to feel close. I want that sense of security. There are some things on the other side. I can be critical. I do feel safe alone. So there are things that are different, but I do cry and I struggle to set limits because I'm a people pleaser. I don't set those boundaries. So how you interact with people can be different. So when I talk about the fact that my inner critic would play over things, I had an incident with my director and I'd said something. I can't even remember what it was. And I remember having a meeting with him, the other day. I didn't mean to say that way. He's like, Shelley, I already forgot about it. He goes, I didn't even remember it after the meeting. And I was like, oh. And it wasn't anything bad. It was just, I felt uncomfortable. I wish I'd said it differently. This is part of that inner critic. I worry about coming across wrong. I worry about offending people. I just over worry. And even with all the work I've done, I still have to keep that inner critic in check, or that brain boss, right? The way we think of things, because our lived experiences have set up how we look at things. And that's why, we have to look at things like Are we actually looking at the problem for what it is, or are we over dramatizing it? Are we making it bigger than what it is? So as I said, I am a who I'm with. And some of my things is that I want to be a people pleaser. I tend to avoid issues because I don't want to upset everybody. And I internalize everything without proof. So I tend to result in a very non-supportive internal voice. A voice that constantly tells me that I'm wrong. A voice that constantly tells me, oh, you're going to mess that up again. So I would self-criticize. Oh, look, you didn't do this. Oh, did you forget to take the food out of the freezer? What are you going to feed everybody now? Way to go. So there was a lot of self-criticism. Oh, that outfit looks awful on you. You should probably just, put a big sweater over top of it because you do not look attractive in that. Or, oh, your hair is awful. You should just wear a hat going outside or something. And I would just be very critical. Everything I did. My work wasn't good enough. The way I responded to a situation wasn't good enough. And it was a constant self-flogging. It was a constant self-beating. I would catastrophize everything. Everything was the worst case scenario. Somebody was going to not speak to me because of this. Somebody was going to avoid me because of that. I would replay conversations over in my head to the point where I didn't even know what was actually discussed anymore because I had made myself play it over and over and over in my head so many times that I thought I'd done 10 other things wrong as well. Mistakes, disagreements, and I would just keep finding more issues. Oh, they don't like me because of this, or they're going to be mad at me because of that. I destroyed my self-confidence through this. So in doing this, I took away, the more that inner critic would self-criticize and I would catastrophize everything, I took away my self-confidence. I destroyed my belief in myself, and I started wearing a mask because I felt like an imposter. And my self-critic would tell me I was an imposter, that I wasn't doing things right, that I didn't know what I was doing. This had a huge impact on my relationships. I was distant, scared. I also found I would suddenly overshare because I'd want to make sure I didn't offend somebody. So I would be like, oh, I do this and I'm really sorry. And they don't need all that information, right? They don't need everything. I was constantly covering and hiding things. Like I had convinced people would be upset if I needed help or if I asked them to do things. So even if it meant I had to stay up longer and do something, even if it meant that when everybody else went to bed, I did chores or I did other stuff, anything I could do to avoid things that I couldn't handle, I was doing. And I would overextend myself to seem stronger. So even though I was criticizing myself, telling myself I wasn't capable, I was making it worse by trying to do more and more and finding ways to get that praise for being helpful and whatnot, while at the same time worrying and being completely convinced that I was in the wrong. There was a lot of miscommunication that came out of that because the more I construed what I was thinking, the harder it got. I was very gullible. I felt distant. I believed everybody had the same intentions I did. So, everything we do, our goals, our ambitions, our values, our beliefs, everything comes from who we are as an individual, regardless of the type of person you are, if it's who I am or who I'm with. And what makes us happy is based on those values and beliefs. And I would just gullibly assume everybody believes the same way. Everybody wants to be as authentic as I do. Everybody is trustworthy. Everybody is going to. And that's where that oversharing and whatnot. And then you start to lose faith because you're putting faith in the wrong people. And then there's disappointment. And there are instances, there are things where we do that and we lose that control. So how did I take my control? Well, the first thing was therapy. So in doing therapy, I started off after my mental health issue. And when I took time off work, I worked with a social worker actually who was doing my therapy. And we did cognitive behavior therapy. And it really was just taking a step back. So different than the emotions therapy, it was walking through why I thought certain things and walking through how I could recognize the difference between, here's what happened, but here's who I am. And going through all the different lessons and rethinking how I behave, right? So being in tune with how my brain would react, being in tune with, and which is tying into the emotional feelings therapy as well, but in tune with how I react to stuff, how things trigger me, and recognizing that I decide who I get to be, and I can overcome those bad situations. Those mistakes don't define who I am. I define who I am. I had to do a lot of stress management. And stress management is more than, meditation. It's more than gratitude and affirmations. For me, stress management was learning boundaries. Learning when I had to tell people, I'm sorry, I don't have time. And I take that back. I still say I'm sorry. Remember, that was one of the things. I am infamous for saying sorry way too much. And it's not a bad thing, but it's not a good thing either. I had to accept that it was okay for me to say no or not now. Were my kids disappointed sometimes where I said, no, we can't do that? Absolutely. They understood because I could explain it to them. And I could say, I appreciate that's what you want to do. I can't do it right now. I'm dealing with a flare. I'm dealing with too much work. I've got to focus on putting the money into replacing the dishwasher that broke, whatever that is. Or I get it. You want to go to the store. I don't have time to do it right now because I have to finish the laundry and I have to clean the kitchen. So if you want to help do some of the kitchen, I can finish the laundry and then we can go a little later. So the not now. Decide when you have to say no because it's not feasible and when you have to say not now. It helped me. I also had to fix my narrative. I had to stop replaying. I had to stop replaying everything. I would go back and I couldn't let go. It's like, what could I have done differently? What could I have done differently? How did that conversation go? What if I had said this? What if I had done that? I had to stop trying to fix the past. And that's where, my tattoo is there for a reason. It's to be mindful, to live in the present. And there are so many quotes and things that I've read over the last little bit that I just think are great, but it's the past and the future make a lot of noise. And then we miss the present because we're too busy looking at everything else. So learning to live in the present, learning to be mindful, to learn to breathe and start calling things what they are. So fixing my narrative involved me sitting there. And when I started to have anxiety, feeling it, acknowledging it, calling it what it is, saying, okay, this is just a panic attack. Okay, let's stop. What am I feeling? And that goes back to, I think last season I talked about grounding. So I really focused on the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding, where I would just stop and I would plant my feet and I would think about stuff and I would look around the room and I would think, what are 5 things I can see? What are 4 things? And I don't have it in front of me, so I'm going to mess it up. But I would go through the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 sight. It's all about your senses, right? So bringing it back so that you focus on the present, slowing everything down. I would do breathing and pay attention to how fast my breathing was going. I would pay attention to how hard my heart was beating. And I would tell myself I was okay. I would tell myself I was safe. It didn't come overnight. It involved a lot of practice. And the practice had to happen when I wasn't overwhelmed, when I wasn't having a panic attack. So it became part of my habits. It became something I had to keep practicing to identify. Putting your hand when you feel that anxiety, that feeling of overwhelm, and just taking a breath. And I'm here. I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm at my house. I'm at wherever I am. I'm not in danger. I'm just feeling overwhelmed. Acknowledge it. Let it happen. It's not about masking it. It's not about hiding it. Accept it. And deal with it. I had to take time, a lot of time, and be patient with myself. I had to learn to show myself grace. I had to really allow the fact that new habits weren't going to happen overnight. And controlling my inner critic was not going to happen overnight. And what really helped was my family knowing that I was dealing with this. And one of the things Dan is beyond famous for is the fact that he will correct me. He's like, hey, when we were dating, he's like, don't talk to my girlfriend like that, or don't talk to my fiance like that. My kids now do that. And I do that with them. Hey, don't talk to my kid like that. And they do it to me. Don't talk to my mom like that. We figured out a way to help each other when we start to use those negative connotations, or we start to call ourselves things, right? I did have to identify self-care. And again, it's not just about gratitude and affirmations. It was about eating better. It was about getting sleep. Sleep hygiene was huge because my voice would tell me that you never get anything done. And so then I'd end up staying up late and doing all this other stuff because I thought I just had to. I would play things over so much I couldn't fall asleep at night, right? So I really had to learn those self-care habits. I had to learn to take off that mask and make time for me and tell my kids and tell people that I'm with, I need time alone. I just need to be on my own right now. The things that help me most is actually sitting down and understanding. So I remember I talked about when dating really wasn't working, like right before I met Dan. I was like, why am I not lovable? Why am I not this? Again, it had nothing to do with that. It was my inner critic telling me I wasn't lovable. I had to stop and admit, no, this is what I want. I also had to admit my limitations. I don't want this, or I can't do this. And I have to accept that I'm gonna make mistakes. I need to recognize that I am not perfect. Nobody is. And we only learn through those trial and errors. We will make a mistake. We will do something wrong. And how you treat yourself when that happens is part of what feeds into that inner critic. So when that inner critic is really loud, every mistake was being amplified and exploded. And then that mistake would happen even more. I had to recognize I can only control my own behavior and thoughts. I, as a person, need to look at my values. It's the same thing when you're setting habits and goals. You're basing them on what you believe in. You're basing them on who you want to be and how you want to be seen by others. That's the only narrative that I can control. I have to try and exhibit the emotions, the behaviors, the values, and the beliefs that are important to me, and know that if I let that inner critic make me get angry, if I let that emotion take over without acknowledging it and recognizing it and dealing with it, somebody may see me as difficult. Somebody may see me as not put together. So if I don't want that, I have to figure out how to control that. I have to figure out the self-care steps I need and the things I need to do for myself. I cannot control what other people think, say, or do. I can share my thoughts. I can share my stories. There may be people listening to this right now going, hey, you're full of crap. That's okay. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. This works though. And no matter whose book you're reading, they'll tell you the same thing. You cannot control what other people say and do. And the only thing you can do is manage who you are and decide what voices you want to have in your life. And that's why for me, my values are very strong. And I don't tolerate hate, and I don't tolerate ill treatment of others or people that constantly fabricate the truth. I believe in authenticity. I believe in sharing our stories because they're unique to us, and I may not relate to everybody's. I may have a different viewpoint, but that's okay. Those are my opinions. They're entitled to theirs as long as they don't misalign with my values. And that's my choice. I make that decision just as you can make the choice as to who you keep. I had to learn to do things for me and to make personal time. And as a mom, as a parent, like this isn't exclusive, but as parents, we have a hard time. We spend all our time taking our kids to sporting events, to school events, to friends' parties, to social events. Like it's constant go, 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 go. And unless you book time for yourself as well, you're entitled to that. As parents, you can go out on a date night and you get a babysitter or a family member or somebody to watch the kids. You go out and make time for yourselves. You do things that help you. I had to learn to trust myself, to manage the worry. And the most important thing that I can say right now is this is not a one size fits all. And it's not going to fix instantly. It's an ongoing struggle. Like I still deal with this. I still deal with my inner critic. I still deal with name calling. I still deal with realizing my word choices. And that's where I have to keep working on what's sustainable for me and identifying the different ways that I can practice self-care and gratitude and affirmation and all those things to align with who I am. So some of the resources that I did use that I found very useful as I went through this, and I've mentioned them before, Mood Gym. It's online. It's a web-based program, and it walked me through. And you do it at your own pace. I think you have access for a year when you do it. There is a nominal fee, I think. I like the Calm app. It's, again, another one that gives me different ways. And those are really helpful. The different therapies, cognitive behavior, emotional feelings therapy, look them up. There are many others. Find a counselor, find a life coach, find somebody who can help you to just talk it through. It is not easy to reshape that inner critic. It takes a lot of time and a lot of practice, and it's very easy to let our inner critic control. But at the end of the day, maybe that inner critic really should just be our inner voice telling us, this is what's important to you. This is what you want to be. You can do this. So imagine if we start turning that negativity into something of, you've got a really great idea here. Go with it. Try it. Who knows what we can accomplish? There are so many things when we change that voice, when we change it from an inner critic to our own personal cheerleader, it's going to make life different. It's going to reduce how much we misremember actual events. There's going to be different ways. Not everything I've done will work for you, but hopefully you've got some ideas from there that you can use and move forward with. I hope you found it interesting, and there's still lots to talk about with inner critic. It's not quite done there. We'll revisit it time and time again as it's a constant thing. And as long as you're aware of it, and as long as you know, you can find ways to deal with it and overcome it. So in closing, I hope you find a way to say something good about yourself today. Find some way to thank yourself, to recognize an accomplishment, to cheer yourself on, or to encourage you to try something new. Change the narrative. I challenge you, change that narrative. Find something different that you can do today and that you can say, even if it's just for a second. That's all it takes. You don't have to write it down. Just think it. Start changing that voice. Tell yourself to be nice to yourself. Show yourself grace. Show yourself compassion. Thanks so much for joining. Be sure to like and subscribe. Be kind, be strong, be you, and we'll see you soon.